Hello and welcome to episode 86 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And that means I'm James Whittingham. This week, COP26 kicks off in Glasgow, Scotland. In Canada's oil patch, new mayor set to declare climate emergency. The islands of Torres Strait take the Australian government to court over climate. And Toyota... Wait, what? Toyota announces its first electric vehicle? No way! All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show.
So, James, how you doing this week? Anything new?
Do things always have to be new, Brian? I'm under a lot of pressure for new things, and I'm not a lot of new things. I ate some Halloween candy last night. Did you eat some Halloween candy?
I didn't.
Did you give candy out to trick-or-treaters?
No, we didn't. We just turned the lights off, kind of a COVID thing.
One of the people I took my daughter out. She's in grade 8. People felt sorry for her because she was by herself, and they gave her extra candy. Which is a technique that I hadn't thought of, Brian, because when you think about it, if as a kid you want to get the most candy.
Oh, yeah, it was all about maximizing.
You know what slows you down? Going in a group. Going in a group slows you down, and this is not only faster and more efficient, it gets you more sympathy. When I'm handing out candy at the front door, unlike some Grinch people in the other side of the city, I will see 5 kids and I'll think, I'm going to run out. There's so many kids. I'll just give them a small amount each. I see one kid, I think, what the heck? I can't just give them, one little candy or something, a little piece of gum. I've got to stuff their bag. So I can see how that would work.
Well, I remember one year you did the baller move of handing out full-size chocolate bars.
Oh, no, Brian, we went to the rich area of our where they're adding new houses to our subdivision. Ours is a 30-year-old subdivision, but they're adding new houses beyond it, finally. And somebody gave 2 full-size chocolate bars and a bag of chips to my daughter.
Whoa.
But my baller move was when we bought our first house in a modest area of town, and I bought a king-size chocolate bar. I went to the store and bought 20 king-size chocolate bars. Yeah. These are massive. This is the type of thing that'll get you a reputation in your neighborhood for decades to come. Decades, Brian.
Yeah.
Decades.
Legendary.
Full-size chocolate bar gets you cred. This thing got me royalty. Except my jackass trailer trash neighbor came over dressed as a hockey goalie, standing at the front door saying, "Hey, look at me. Can I have a Kit Kat?" And I just slammed the door in his face. I didn't say a word to him.
This is a full-grown adult.
This is a full-grown adult who put on goalie equipment trying to get my giant king-size Kit Kat, which is, the size of at least 3 chocolate bars, at least. The Kit Kats were not for the bloody adults. I don't care about the adults. I care about the children. The children are the people who are going to toilet paper my house.
Since you were giving away the candy, your blood sugar level was probably plummeting.
Oh, yes. I never get through a Halloween, without eating candy. I don't know how the hell you do it. You just casually not eat candy? What kind of a human being are you?
I have a few.
I have no addictions. None whatsoever. Everything's perfect in my life. I own half a Tesla.
All right. Well, here's my addiction that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, finally.
It's social media. So there was a big announcement this week about Facebook. They're changing their name to Meta, and everyone was making lots of jokes about it. But I kind of finally thought, maybe this is time. It's finally time to delete Facebook and delete Instagram because Instagram is owned by Facebook. And I think I might actually do it. I downloaded my archive. You can request an archive from each of those sites. The Instagram one came pretty quickly. The Facebook one took about a day. They have to generate the file for you to download. So I downloaded my archive of everything I've posted. And I don't know. I think I can do it. I think I can pull the trigger and get rid of Instagram and Facebook.
It's a challenging thing to do. I have made more use of Facebook than most people. Over the years, I was a stay-at-home dad for 10 years while Facebook sort of took off in the beginning there in the mid-aughts. And I maintain contact with my friends and social circles. But I really do enjoy, I posted a lot of stuff about my kids, and I do enjoy because you forget. Having a kid is like it's tomorrow's memory erases today's memory. You forget. It's just a constant barrage of new things, and it's really cool to see some of the things that my kids have done or not done, just appeared in things in life.
Right, and this is why people don't delete it, and that. You got to hand it to them, like especially the first 5 years, because you and I were on there in the early days. The first 5 years of Facebook were fantastic because they didn't try to monetize it right away. They really just left it as this playground for us to sort of connect with our friends. And it was really amazing in the beginning. And then it's just been this slow decline and obvious numerous problems with the platform. I mean, too numerous to mention. But
it's disgusting. It's wrecking the world, Brian.
It's wrecking the world.
Put it into words, man. It's wrecking the world. Facebook is wrecking the world.
And just the details that have come out. Of course, there's hearings going on. The one that sort of struck me. Remember when they came up with those different emojis, sort of emotion emojis, to like a post or dislike a post or whatever. And there's an angry emoji. And they emphasize that 5 times over the regular like emoji in the algorithm. So promoting the things that make everybody angry. So that was just one detail that really upset me.
I'm disgusted by it. I did delete Instagram. I thought about going back recently. But I never, also, I didn't make great use of Instagram.
It would have been the perfect platform to go to. Because it was an independent thing. It was separate from Facebook. And of course, they just killed it by buying it. So that's the unfortunate thing.
What am I going to do? Instagram my craft dinner? I'm not an Instagrammer. I don't need to fancy restaurants. I don't know. I digress. I'm getting my tires changed on my Nissan Leaf for the first time. I'm replacing my ball tires.
Now these are...
Which are starting to disintegrate.
Summer tires or winter tires, or what are they?
They're summer tires, and... they're making a lot of noise. This is a thing about that I wouldn't have noticed in my crappier cars from days gone by because they had gas engines in it. Now, when your tire gets bald, it gets louder.
Wow,
so you
I didn't
really
know
notice that. You really notice that in electric cars. And I really hated the winter tires that came with it because they were loud. They were louder than normal, especially at highway speeds. Yeah. And they were, less fuel efficient too. So you took a big hit in fuel efficiency with your winter tires, as everybody will. They don't talk about that with ice cars, but your softer, treadier tires will have more rolling resistance. So, well, sir, let's get on with the show. I have a tire change appointment right afterwards. The mayor of Calgary, Alberta, in the heart of Canada's oil country, has done something rather surprising for that province.
Yeah, so they just had an election for the new mayor, and I was in Calgary just a couple of weeks ago, so I saw the signs. And so Jyoti Gondek is the new mayor of Calgary. First of all, the first female mayor of Calgary. And I caught this clip, an interview with on Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson, and she's prepared to declare a climate emergency in the heart of Canada's oil country.
We have had the opportunity to declare climate emergency for years. We have had various documents presented to us as a council, and I think we've had more than enough time to review them. So let's get serious. Let's declare this, and let's start going after some of the capital that we will see flow in once we make a bold move like that.
It is a bold move, and I don't have to tell you about how even a phrase like climate emergency can ripple through a downtown core. Do you have to find a balance as the mayor of a city that's seen itself flourish because of oil and gas revenue? Do you have to be careful about the words you use, or are we past that? Do people misunderstand where Calgary and business leaders are at right now?
I don't believe that talking about a climate emergency and oil and gas are mutually exclusive ideas. I think, as a matter of fact, we've forgotten what we're good at. We are very good at energy production, and we are also leaders in innovative ways to practice energy production. We became fixated on that end product being oil and gas. So let's move past the outputs and start talking about the processes again, and let's put ourselves on the map.
So this is the thing that always kind of gets me in this discussion, is that, the oil and gas sector, this is a capitalist venture. That's, people get into that to make money. But when somebody comes up with a newer, better, cheaper, cleaner way to do the same thing, why would you fight that? If there's a competitor opens up down the street and figures out a better way to make energy, well, then, if you're a capitalist, if you're a business person, you should be like ready to go and compete. But this is the opposite of what's happening. They're sort of crying foul and saying, no, we don't want to compete. We don't want to go clean. We don't want to change. We just want to keep doing what we're doing. I've never understood that. And so I thought that was the perfect point for the mayor to make.
Well, you've never lived in the oil industry and basked in its good times. I think that's the problem. I haven't either, of course, but,
Sure, but if you take a sort of a sober second look at it, no one's going to come and invest in Calgary, in Alberta, if they're not going to clean up their act. Like, this is, you can't just put your head in the sand and, the European Union is going to need clean products, carbon-free products. And if, you can't get what you want out of a particularly oil-soaked region, you'll just go somewhere else. Like all of this is completely beside the point because it's going to happen anyway.
And people are going to become more and more climate conscious as the old people die off and the young people come in and replace them. And there's going to be a larger demand for accountability. And it's not good enough to say, hey, the world's going to burn oil, so burn our oil because we're going to find ways to reduce emissions. And that's great, but, the oil sands, there's nothing you can do in the oil sands to reduce the emissions to get, something that's straight out of the ground in Saudi Arabia. I don't understand how you can make that argument and have people expect to believe you. And I'm, like I've said last week, I'm done with oil and gas. I have no more sympathy for them whatsoever. I'm not going to say, well, the government should legislate their end, but they are legislating something, which we'll talk about in a moment here when we talk about the COP26 announcements that came out today, hot off the press. But I'm quite, it's a culture, Brian. It's a culture. It's an oil culture. It's part of their identity. They've had so many good times. If you can't start divesting yourself from that culture now, you're going to be a homeless province, just without self-esteem, without hope. You have to just start now, and tough conversations need to be had.
No, and in the same election for the mayor, they also had a question on the ballot about ending equalization. So we do this thing in Canada where we have provinces and have not provinces. Basically, the provinces with more money share some of that money to the other provinces that they don't have it. And Alberta's been mad about this for years because they've been a have province, creating extra money, lots of money. And they've been mad for years about having to give away some of this money to the rest of Canada. So they had a vote, a plebiscite, and narrowly, they decided that now they can't actually do this because it's a federal law. It would take the federal government to actually do it. But they voted in Alberta to, get rid of equalization. We don't want to be a part of it. But they're going to need it real soon, James. Don't tell them, but they're going to need it real soon.
This is the hilarious thing. If they left Canada, if they became their own country, they would be so screwed if the current establishment was running things because no one's going to buy their oil. It's our own province is touting how great the oil price is. Well, if you sell one bathtub full and there's a supply and demand issue and you get a good price for that bathtub, you can't build your future on that one bathtub full of oil. It's just demand. Of course, everyone expected demand to bounce back because of the pandemic, but and it's going to help. It's the high prices of oil are only going to help the transition. That's one thing that I regretted about the pandemic's effect on the whole thing. On oil prices was that it slowed down the transition because now you can't really compare electric to gas if gas is really cheap.
Gas was cheap. Well, it's not cheap anymore.
It ain't cheap anymore, Brian.
So in further Canadian news, before we get to the COP26, so just a few days ago, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau here in Canada reshuffled his cabinet, and he named Greenpeace activist Steven Guilbeault as the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. And this, of course, just days before the COP26 summit in Glasgow. So I think that's generally a good thing. That's better than not doing something like that. But this is kind of the thing that Trudeau's a genius at, is the optics of it. So he can now go to COP26 and say, hey, look, I got the Greenpeace guy here. Canada's good. He knows he needs an offset because he knows Canada's reputation on the world stage with our dirty oil is not a great one. So hopefully it leads to good things. But we got to keep an eye on what happens in our government.
The Premier of Alberta pooped his pants when he heard that. He was very disturbed. This is a guy who climbed the CN Tower. This is not the guy that the oil and gas industry like. They don't like Greenpeace people who climb the CN Tower to protest the government, being in cahoots with the former President of the United States, Bush. And he's our premier here in Saskatchewan doesn't claim he cares, that he's not worried about it. But if this guy is worth his salt, do you really think a Greenpeace activist is not going to care? Is just going to go and be complacent doing whatever the government does? He's going to push for things. I really think that this is a good thing.
It's better than not having somebody push for things. And Trudeau allowed him to vote no on the pipeline purchase, and this is an unusual thing in Canadian politics. We always vote with our party here. It's those are the rules. But he allowed him to vote no against the pipeline, so he's sort of treated separately from the rest of the cabinet. But I wanted to mention too, like the old Premier of Alberta, Ralph Klein, back in the early 2000s. I found this article in the Calgary Herald talking about this, this announcement of the new minister. And so they were recapping some of the stories from the past. So in 2002, Greenpeace went to the premier's house in Alberta and started putting up solar panels on the roof as a sort of an activist stunt. They put up, and and the premier and his wife were in the house at the time, and they were kind of worried
about what the
hell's
going on.
Didn't know what was going on. They thought there was a home invasion. So I wouldn't necessarily condone those kind of tactics, but the new minister for the environment was involved in that stunt in 2002.
I did not know that. Well, Minister, we'll be keeping an eye on you here on the show and seeing what goes on, but I have a feeling that it's an interesting thing that they picked him, and he can always quit. And by the way, that pipeline, the Trans Mountain Pipeline, was a mistake. The company didn't want to do it, so they backed out, and so the government bought the pipeline to appease the political tensions in Alberta.
And it did nothing to appease the political tensions because they all hate Trudeau anyway.
It's a waste of money.
And it's a waste of money. You
could have bought a couple gazillion solar panels and wind turbines and actually put it to good use, or money to help, transition the workers in Alberta. Brian, COP26 is kicking off in Glasgow, Scotland as we speak, and people, prime ministers and heads of state are making their opening speeches and making announcements. We have a few of those announcements today. I'm going to start with Canada because we were just talking about Canada. Canada will impose a hard cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector. In other words, they're saying what it is now, that's it. No more emissions. That's capped. He claims that's a big deal because it's really hard to do. Our economy is dependent on it. In 2019, Canada's oil and gas sector accounted for 26% of total emissions from this country that you and I are broadcasting from. The second largest source is the transportation sector. We know what to do about the transportation sector. You convert it to electric and you power that with clean energy.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, we got to start talking about not just the cap, but reductions, but, baby steps.
For our friends in Australia, Australia has announced a target of net zero emissions by 2050. In case you're laughing or yelling, I thought I would give a little pause there. They are also going to reduce emissions by 35% by 2030, which is actually worse than our local provincial government here, which is shooting for 50%. So that's pretty pathetic. But a lot of people see these net zero targets as a good thing because it's a commitment to the idea of net zero, and it's too little, it's too slow and all that. My main concern about, I actually am feeling kind of depressed about COP26 because coming out of the G20, they didn't have very much to say on the climate. They didn't accomplish much. They didn't seem to have the willpower. China wasn't on board, and Russia wasn't on board. So I'm a little bit kind of depressed about it, but and India has set a target of 2070, which on first blush is kind of frustrating and bewildering because that's 10 years after China. China set 2060. India has set 2070. And I postulated on Twitter that burning actual cash in 2070 would be more efficient than burning coal by then, price-wise. That you could just take money and burn that to make electricity, and it would be cheaper than burning coal. So what the hell are you thinking?
That's probably true.
The biggest issues with COP is to move quickly, I feel. We know that technology and the price disruptions of clean energy are going to sort of take care of themselves starting in the next decade. And it's going to become more and more so. Like, you'd be insane. You're insane to run a coal plant now, even on cost. But the fact that you can shut it down and replace it and save gobs of money in a few years' times by clean energy just tells me that the work that has to be done sooner than later. And that's the problem. A lot of things, and this is our view of the show here, and you can argue with that, but we think that a lot of technology disruptions and the price disruptions of new technology, including food, will really take care of a lot of the climate problems as we move towards 2050. It's now that we need to move and make the hard choices.
And at the very least, stop any new fossil projects, because you can go ahead and announce a 2050 target for, carbon neutral, but then turn around and approve new projects and just say, oh, well, we'll shut those down before 2050. So first step is no more new projects. Be great if we got there.
China has said that it will not finance new coal inside its borders after 2021, at the end of this year, that no more money is going to go into coal. That doesn't mean that the plants won't be, finished getting online in the next few years, but it's not necessarily a great thing. I think they could have done better. I know their energy demands are exploding, but there's better solutions for it. And India, I think they should be more on the ball here, because they not only have to deal with climate change, they have to deal with the real problem of air pollution, which is a political thing. It's a political thing in China. You people in the streets mad about not being able to breathe, that's not good for your political stability. And that's what these leaders all want. They want stability. They don't want people protesting in the streets or anything like that. So, yeah. Some people are happy about the India 2070 thing because it means that 90% of the world now, population-wise, has set a target for net zero. So that's a start. But in contrast, China has announced neutrality by 2060. US and EU, the EU aim to hit net zero by 2050.
Well, as we mentioned last week, the real problem is they didn't invite us to COP26.
I would like to be there. We'd be putting out a podcast every 10 minutes. There'd be so many people to talk to. And the parties, Brian, the parties. I saw Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada get out of a Tesla. It's the first time I've seen that sight today on the news. I assume, and I have a story later about what the police are using for motorcycles as well there, which is interesting. So India will increase its non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030, but it'll get half of its energy from renewable resources by the same date, which is what we're doing here in Saskatchewan, Canada, a rich province, not a developing one, not a quickly growing one necessarily, and that's the best we can do. Is the same as India. So that just pisses me off about what everybody else is doing, because I know the challenges of India. The middle class is exploding and people are needing energy, and they deserve to have it because we've had it for 100 years and we've thrived. Everyone else in developed countries and first world countries have had a good go at this, and now they're getting screwed. Other people are getting screwed by it. So the intensity of their carbon economy is going to be reduced by 45%, they're hoping.
right, so we're getting back to some news from Australia. We haven't had that much lately, but here we go. So there's a series of islands of the Torres Strait, and they're taking the Australian government to court. So they saw what happened in the Netherlands. We reported on that a few months ago, that people took the Dutch government to court over not doing enough about climate change and reducing emissions. So they're trying a similar tactic. I'm really interested in these kinds of things, like when a government doesn't take care of its people, then you can take them to court, and you're not necessarily going to win, but they did win in the Netherlands, so they're taking that as a hopeful possible precedent. These are islands that are just 1.5 meters above sea level, and the level has risen 6 centimeters just in the last decade. So this is a set of islands that's in grave danger. Perhaps nothing we can do at this point because climate change is already happening. But at the very least, they can perhaps get some justice from the Australian government.
I'm a little discouraged by the lack of willingness to fight climate change, given that our climate is getting weird already, that there's bad things happening already. They weren't supposed to happen until later. They're happening now. It is quite incontrovertibly evident that they are. And, our best efforts will still allow for the climate to get 50% worse than it is now, the warming to become that much worse. So what's going to happen? I mean, the systems are just going to go that much crazier, probably twice as much at 1.5 degrees as they are now, or 3 times or 4 times as much as weirdness. So the fact that we're not jumping on this is, especially when we have the solutions. The solutions are already there. People keep looking for new solutions. And I don't know what the assumption is. The assumption is that solar only works at night and wind doesn't always blow. Well, there's storage and there's overcapacity and there's things that we talk about on this show that will solve that problem now. And there's things like just using existing hydro storage by pumping it back upstream when you have excess sunlight. It gets discouraging. And I know that people, the sense that I get from COP26 is that the countries want to build back their economies. What's happening at COP26 is a lot of demands for the money to be paid out to developing nations, including India. So, but people, they want to spend money, but they want to spend money on their own economy. Like the United States wants to build wind turbines around the whole coasts and stuff like that. So I don't know, but like cigarettes, I'm hoping that that cases in court will work. I mean, the oil companies and people like that have vast amounts of money and more money than tobacco, so I assume. So yeah, I don't know. I'm hopeful though, Brian. Toyota is unveiling its first all-electric car. Finally. They have some offerings in China, but they're not, they're repurposed cars. They're not ground up, and this one is for the world. This is the BZ or Z, depending on where you live. Brian, as an academic, can you tell me where the letter Z is pronounced Z? Is it just Canada, or is it other countries like England and Australia?
No, it's. I can tell you that the United States of America is the only country in the world that pronounces it Z.
So Toyota has unveiled this BZ4X. That was for you, United States. For everyone else, it's the BZ4X. It's an electric SUV. It's not that different than the RAV4 in size or styling. It's got a typical RAV4 modern Toyota styling. Interesting few things about this, Brian, is that it has bi-directional charging, which is a bit bold for Toyota to do. That means that the charging can charge your house or power your house. So it can go both ways. Now, this is something that we expect that all EVs will have the option to do in the future. And that's one way of actually stabilizing the grid. People talk about, but the grid can't handle it. Well, what happens if you have 1 million electric cars and 1 million school buses and 1 million city buses, and these things all have batteries in them and they can go both ways? Well, that stabilizes the grid, and you get paid for that. So this is something I don't have any details on it yet. They haven't released any details. Different car companies have different ideas how this could work. The Ford F-150 pickup truck electric is supposed to be doing this. The Lightning. Interesting though that it has a wing-shaped steering wheel like the Tesla Model S Plaid, which was kind of controversial. And the Roadster, the new Roadster, it's a steer-by-wire system though, unlike Tesla, which means that the faster you move it, the more sort of oomph it gives it. Like you don't have to spin the steering wheel multiple rotations. You can just move it without doing it all around because it'll just adjust to what you need.
Yeah, this is the complaint some people have about the yoke in the Tesla Model S, is that with fewer places to grab the wheel, it can be kind of a pain if you have to turn it a lot. So yeah, Toyota says that they've
and they did this. They
problem.
claim for better visibility. So I guess for shorter people, it's harder to see the dash. It's harder to see over the dash, and that can be frustrating sometimes when you're driving if you don't have the right angle looking at your speed and whatnot. So it has one thing, the big negative about this is that it's underpowered, that it's not very powerful. It's going to be an underwhelming electric vehicle. It's only going to have 160 horsepower in the all-wheel drive configuration. That's 80 horsepower front and back, two motors. That's disappointing. The acceleration time is over 7 seconds, so that's disappointing. I mean, the RAV4 Prime, the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle that has something like 50 kilometers of range, is the most powerful Toyota there is right now. It's the fastest Toyota there is beyond their sports car. So that, is going to be a disappointing. It's not going to be a big. So you want people to look at EVs and see how much better they are. Well, they've really sort of done an underwhelming job here. The battery pack is 71.4 kilowatt hours, which is not tiny, not huge. What do you think about the size of that, Brian?
It's a decent size. It's really the question is what range do you get out of that? And looks like it'll be just kind of adequate.
Now, they're claiming up to 500 kilometers and 310 miles, but that is the WLTC range, and they're also calling it a cruising range. I don't know what that means. No one knows what that means. They're trying to figure that out. So it could be as low as below 4. It could be like 375 kilometers EPA. It might be 400. Probably. That would be decent. That's what your car started as, and is a bit better now with software updates. Yep. Another thing, I think that, there's they're going to do over-the-air software updates, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You got to set up a new architecture for the future. So
things that make sense doesn't mean Toyota's going to do it, Brian. Just because it makes sense. This is what surprises me, is because it does make sense.
That's true, yeah.
So, that means that you park your car in your driveway or your garage and it connects to your Wi-Fi. In the morning, you wake up with new software. Like there's bugs taken out of it, maybe the way they treat the motor acceleration and the charging speed, all these algorithms that are related to the efficiency of how well it worked.
Perhaps.
So here's another thing. It comes with an optional solar roof, which is not completely new to Toyota, but Toyota claims it generates electricity equivalent to 1,800 kilometers of driving distance per year. That's a vacation, Brian.
No, that's decent. I mean, I love the idea of it kind of trickle charging.
These cars sometimes have a vampire drain where they're draining all the time because they're... they have to sort of be alive to top up the 12-volt battery. And, sometimes if you want to be able to hook up your app to it and control the car, it needs to have a little bit of electricity going around it. So that's interesting. As solar panels become a little bit more efficient, it sort of makes more sense. It doesn't do a great deal for you, but the fact that it does something is fun. I mean, that's also parking it in the sun, and maybe every day of the year was sunny in their test of that, but it's something. And even if it prevents vampire drain, it's a good thing. So that's good too. The DC fast charging is also decent. It's at 150 kilowatts. And that's a charge that Toyota says can get to 80% in 30 minutes. Now, it's hard to say if that's 20 to 80 or 10 to 80. It depends on the car company. They haven't been specific about that. But 150 kilowatt hours or kilowatt charging speed is pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's good. Mine just goes to 170. as the cheaper Tesla.
That
but,
I would consider that
great.
kind of like the base level that you would hope for now on a new EV, right?
Yeah, 150 is the base.
Having said
sure.
that, the new Chevy Bolt is only 50, so it's very disappointing.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I wanted to get to not too much feedback this week, but one of our listeners had said a few weeks ago he wanted to tell you that I sent in a picture of an induction cooktop, because we were talking about that a couple months ago, or a month ago, let's say, and you want to power your home with an induction cooktop. Well, he sent us a picture of an appliance that has an induction cooktop on top of the stove there, and it's got fake gas flames coming from it. They're just light, but it's just so that you know that it's on. It has fake gas flames, so that'll be comforting to you.
Yeah, well, of course, people have fireplaces like that too. Like, it's just an electric heater, but it's got these, sort of projected flames. And I always thought that was bizarre and weird. But, when I first saw one of those 20, 30 years ago, but now there's tons of them around. There's many of those kind of fake fireplaces. I don't know. People like them, I guess. I don't know.
So I'm happy that Toyota has this. It sounds like it's going to be $50,000 in Canada, $40,000 in the US. It's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to really. It's not going to be it's something. It's okay. I mean, people who are loyal to the Toyota brand, it'll be good. I'm sure it'll be a reliable car. It'll be, a nice car to drive. However, I just, I'm disappointed that the power is low. Maybe this is the Japanese car that they're putting stats on. So maybe outside North America, it'll have different stats. It's hard to tell. Happy that they're doing it, though. Also, though, I wish they had a car. I wish they had a Corolla / electric Prius that I could go and buy in the spring, but I can't. So, Brian, Tim Hortons, the ubiquitous donut and coffee restaurant in Canada and the United States, parts of the United States. There's one at every corner here. Thanks Starbucks, but Canadian. And they're building one all over the place. You can't go 2 blocks without seeing one. Anyway, in our humble city of Regina, Saskatchewan, it's always great when we have a story that, is local, because, we're kind of a decrepit, we're not very progressive when it comes to things like this. But we could have the first Tim Hortons restaurant in the world to have sustainability built into it. They're looking at a sod or a living roof, I guess, and rainwater recovery. And the DeStassi family, who owns all the Tim Hortons in this city, is hoping to make this the first in Canada and a blueprint for other Tim Hortons restaurants. And pictured in the little illustrations that they have is 2 Tesla chargers. Superchargers, in fact.
Yeah, no, this is the plan, to incorporate electric vehicle charging too. So, I mean, that's a perfect fit. If there were car chargers at every Tim Hortons, as you just said, there's Tim Hortons on every couple of blocks. This would blanket Canada nicely. And of course, people would park, they'd charge their cars, they'd go in, they'd buy a coffee, they'd buy a donut. It's a win-win.
This bothers me, though, because this will be close to the only Tesla supercharger that we have in this city. And that's located in a Canadian Tire parking lot, which is a hardware / department store type of thing, hardware chain. And there's nothing to eat at Canadian Tire. They used to have a Robin's Donuts in there, but there's nothing to eat at Canadian Tire. And the restaurants, you actually have to cross the street and go looking around. I would like to just know that there's a Tim Hortons there, and I can use the washroom and get a coffee or even lunch. And charge my car for 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Yeah, and who knows if it'll be a Tesla supercharger. That was just in the rendering.
I know.
They could probably, that was like a digital asset that they could easily plop into their drawing. But well, I don't know. It should be fun.
I think that because of its location and because of the way they do things, they should be actually leading this. And I know that there's a mall chain in Canada, as well as Canadian Tire, who's sort of leading this cause. But the Tim Hortons people, if this were in Europe, they would have chargers there. They would be, because it brings in business. You've got a captive audience for 20 or 30 minutes. And why not?
Perfect sense.
And I'm kind of take issue with the green roof. I know that's nice, and it's nice to, retain the water and reduce your water usage, but come on. I mean, it's for the toilet. You're going to just flush rainwater down the toilet. I want solar panels. I want this thing bathed in solar panels. I want carport solar panels. I want chargers galore. And whatever. I want, app ordering that brings your food to your car, to your Tesla as it charges.
I love green roofs, but yeah, I'm partial to solar panels too.
I don't know that green roofs really save the planet, especially here. We're not the hottest place in the world. And, I'm all for it. But like you said, I don't know. Throw some solar on there, man. Why is there no solar? That's a green roof. It's a different kind of green roof. What do you guys think? Contact us at the Clean Energy Show, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, Clean Energy Pod. We have a huge, massive TikTok channel, which is basically going to be a company in itself. Clean Energy Pod. We're over there. People are watching our videos by the goms, just crazy. So we do put clips from the show on there, and some things people like, some things people don't like. Anyway, we got a YouTube channel, lots of stuff on there. Check that out for special features and all kinds of things. But yeah, the lightning round is coming up, Brian, right after we get into some Tesla news.
Yeah, so as usual, lots of Tesla news. The stock was on fire again today. It's over $1,200 a share. That's wild. It's moved an insane amount in the last week and a half or so. But Tesla's opened another delivery center in China. We were just talking about them opening a delivery center just a couple of weeks ago. Well, there's another one. So they've got three now, three gigantic Tesla delivery centers in China. This one is in Wuhan. It's crazy. These things are massive, and obviously they're planning for a huge number of deliveries out of China. So the city of my birth, I was born in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and the supercharger there is finally open. This is a big deal for us around here. So we now have a supercharger route on Highway 16 from Saskatoon to Edmonton. This is kind of more northern Canada in terms of populated Canada. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, there's basically only two corridors that go through the west in Canada.
Yeah.
And one of them splits off here and goes north and goes through Edmonton and to Jasper National Park and then through northern BC. And that one was dry. People could not take their Teslas and make a trip that way. Now they can, so it's a huge deal.
Yeah, in North Battleford, where I was born, this is a pretty out-of-the-way little city, so you know that Tesla knows what they're doing when they're, in advance of anybody probably owning a Tesla in North Battleford. Maybe there's one or two, but that's a big deal. You gotta, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for Saskatchewan. It's a good thing for tourism. It's a good thing for the exploding adoption of electric vehicles. I'm going to Edmonton next month for the taking my kid to the soccer game for Canada viz Costa Rica for the World Cup qualifying event. Commonwealth Stadium is sold out. I will not be in attendance. I'll be in the hotel room watching with a hot chocolate and some towels. And but yeah, it's going to be cold. They put it in Edmonton in November to freeze the poor Central American teams that will be playing. They literally said that they wanted to punish them. And yeah,
we'll take any advantage we can get.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, well, I would love to drive to Edmonton on that new supercharger route. So maybe I'll do that soon.
Yes, you should, and then you'll keep us up to date.
Yeah. So also, Tesla has opened their R&D center in China. So they said quite some time ago that they were going to design and build the cheaper Tesla car in China. Well, they have an official R&D center in Shanghai that is going to be, all of the kind of R&D necessary for something like a cheaper $25,000 Tesla. And that's now open. So good. Another thing, the speed at which Tesla is deploying this stuff is crazy, that there would be this, two big announcements from China and then, a supercharger in our backyard in North Battleford. It's crazy.
Lucid has started deliveries. Do you want to explain what Lucid is to the a new coming listener?
Yeah, Lucid is a EV startup, and they're planning to sell luxury electric vehicles. These are quite expensive cars, but they're one of the bigger startups. And of course, like everybody, they've been a bit delayed. This has been taking quite a while, but they've delivered, sounds like a couple of dozen of the first Lucid Air luxury cars. They finally had some deliveries, so people were excited to see that. But it's a similar situation, I think, to Rivian, who we talked about. You know, they've only got their production going at maybe one vehicle a day. So Lucid is probably in the same kind of boat. We're hoping that they ramp up their production soon.
You know, I was looking at a list of all the evaluations, the market caps of automakers, and Lucid is on the list. They're actually fairly big and something to contend with, even though they haven't, until this week, produced a new vehicle. So any vehicle. So that's cool. They have a 118 kilowatt hour Dream Pack for their Dream Edition, which is their first vehicle. This is a large sedan, and is the first EV to have over 500 miles plus of range. What do you think about that? Is that just overkill for your luxury rich person who doesn't want to think about electricity, or what?
Yeah, it's probably overkill, but they're selling an expensive car, so they wanted some kind of stat that would put them ahead of Tesla, and it sounds like they have actually done that, just at a much higher price than the Tesla equivalent.
Just a quick note before the lightning round. There was a person on our local EV group with a Kia Niro. And we talked about, because we had a listener write in and say that they were scared off by the replacement cost of a battery pack. So he went to Kia and asked them how much it would cost to replace the battery pack. And that price was 6,500 Canadian. He got it in writing. And but he's also done 30,000 kilometers in a year and not noticed any battery degradation. And this is one thing that I neglected to mention about Toyota, which is also a big plus, is what they are saying is 10% battery degradation in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like, you're selling it to a teenager after 10 years. You don't, the value of the cars is most cars becomes very little at that time. So, especially like a Toyota is not, luxury cars might be an exception, sports cars, but your average car, after 10 years is done. Not necessarily the scrap heap, but it's, its useful life is done, and it's 10% is not bad. That's really good, actually. So I don't know if they're putting some in reserve, Brian, or if they just have that much belief in their battery chemistry, but.
And, all these EVs are backed by warranty to a certain point, so hopefully you will never need to spend that cash.
I've had probably 20% in my Leaf, but I've got the worst car that's ever made for that.
Yeah.
And even 2 months after mine was manufactured, they got the chemistry a lot better. So there are people who are doing a lot better than I am at the same mileage and thing. Having said that, love my electric car. Going to put new tires on her in just a few minutes. But right now, it's time for the lightning round. We're running long, Brian. Please take the lightning round seriously and move quickly this week. Hydrogen bus catches fire in the Netherlands and burns down a bus depot. Your thoughts?
Did you ever see that movie, The Hindenburg, when we were kids in the 70s?
Was that made of hydrogen?
Yes, the Hindenburg was filled with hydrogen and it blew up. So, this is a thing we have to be careful about. That stuff is flammable.
Well, I'm not laughing at it, but it's interesting. It's just something to put out there. Student Transportation of Canada has ordered 1,000 electric school buses from Lion Electric. Now, I looked up our local school bus company, which is also a national company, and they had ordered 250 in the spring, but they're all for Quebec. They're not for here, which is disappointing. They're not for here at all. I wanted this is my last year that my kids will be riding a school bus to French immersion school on the other side of town. And I dreamed, it was a big dream, that I would one day see them get on an electric school bus before that's done. Now I have to wait for the grandkids, Brian.
Oh, well.
Now my kid is on that bus, not only getting COVID, but getting diesel fumes, which will shorten her life, and it kind of pisses me off. 1 in 3 Brits now drink plant-based milk on a regular basis. Your thoughts?
Didn't know that. That's huge.
Since 1990, emissions from the oil and gas sector have nearly doubled in Canada, an increase largely attributed to the dramatic expansion of the oil sands industry.
It's the most energy-intensive oil to extract in the world.
Tesla launches a new solar roof tiles with their solar roof product, and they are more powerful with a higher efficiency. In fact, their maximum power rating is increased by 22%. This is quite a big jump. You can't do that with solar panels. You just can't.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a lot.
It must be something to do with the way they get the light through the glass or something, or just the efficiency of the electronics in it has been improved rather than the silicon cells themselves. That can be improved somewhat, but not 22%. Tesla is launching a pilot program for non-Tesla electric vehicles to use a supercharging network for the first time. This is a pilot project because when you see Tesla superchargers, they're just for Teslas. Well, that's not all electric cars. They have their own connector. But now if you buy an adapter, you wouldn't need an adapter, or is an adapter there? Do you know how this works?
In Europe, you don't need an adapter because the European Union decided to settle on the CCS standard. So in Europe, the Tesla cars have CCS. All the electric cars have CCS, so this is a much easier thing to do in Europe, and they have started to do it. And if you have a non-Tesla car, you can get the Tesla app and somehow sign up and charge your car.
How do you feel about that? Do you think we should have done that here in North America?
Oh, yeah, and it'll come. It'll come eventually, but of course, we'll need adapters here in North America, so that's a bit of a sticking point. But Tesla has released their CCS adapter. They've released it in Korea. So it exists, and it should be coming to North America soon. So that would allow me to charge at CCS stations. So another adapter to allow CCS to charge a Tesla should be no problem and will eventually come.
So 10 supercharger locations in the Netherlands. Interestingly, membership is offered. So you can buy membership and sort of lower the prices because the prices will be more expensive than what it is for a Tesla user to use, which is understandable. But for the convenience, it's there for you. China claims to have the title of having the world's largest EV charging network now. So there's more EV charging in China than anywhere else in the world.
There's been a huge push there, so it makes sense.
Now, Tesla has also announced a new financial leasing product to buy cars with 0% down payment. And the way people analyze this was that $737 payment was possible, which is exactly twice as what I can afford. And that's not even converting to Canadian dollars.
And this is in China as well.
76% of the people in the UK and 84% of its young people say they are worried about climate change. So does that surprise you a little bit?
Yeah, that's a little higher than I would expect, but I guess the tide is turning.
76% of everyone. And that's maybe why their conservative so-called Trumpian leader is so pro-climate change. It's so weird. I don't quite get that dynamic, why this guy who was supposed to be a populist on the conservative side is so climate-y. I mean, they're still doing some bad things with oil and gas there, but, it's cool.
Yeah, no, we've joked about calling him a hippie, and I guess that's what he is.
Please get the hair for it. Brian, we're going to wrap up this week with one more little mention of COP26 going on. The police at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, are riding around patrolling the grounds with Harley-Davidson's electric motorcycles. I think that's very cool.
That's a lot of fun.
That's a lot of fun, and that's our time for this week. Consider rating and reviewing our show on iTunes or wherever you get podcasts. Tell your friends, help us out, spread the word on social media, and I look forward to seeing you more next week.
See you next week.